Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. The history of al-Qaeda. And al-Qaeda, I feel, is likely the first terrorist group to have been named. The first group to have been named terrorist, and I would say that there was an initiation of a war, and it was named the War on Terror, and the first known terrorists were the name al-Qaeda. So what we know of al-Qaeda, it's started with a man named Osama bin Laden, who was funding a small armed group that Saddam Hussein took interest in and thought would be a tool. According to the American CIA, that the mission of the al-Qaeda, Saddam invited al-Qaeda that they would be armed and supplied through the Iraqi government appropriations, and that they would participate into some guerrilla warfare, but that so that it would not be attributed to the Iraqi state. And then what we know of al-Qaeda, that Zarqawi is taking up the leadership, and the al-Qaeda at that time, well, according to the CIA, Saddam Hussein knew that he was coming to a confrontation with the Americans, and that he hid caches of weapons throughout the country of Iraq as a fallback plan in case the capital were to be invaded and they would have to flee. So that later those weapons caches were used by the Saddam's men, who then formulated under the greater name of al-Qaeda, and continued to take cover there. And that the al-Qaeda in Iraq, it was always funded and supplied through Iran. And the CIA and even the American Congress continue throughout the American presences in the Iraq from 2003 and onward, that the al-Qaeda, it was being supplied with men through the Syrian regime, through the Assad's Syrian regime. And in this time, the American Congress discussed that the Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction, and that they were transferred into via tunnels into Syria, and that Syria, the Syrian regime, was further increasing their chemical weapons capabilities, and that they were trying to produce long-range chemical warheads. That the Syrian regime was doing this, and that so the Syrian regime was also helping, was not only trying to create biological and chemical weapons of mass destruction at this time named by Congress, that they were also helping transfer foreign men into the Iraqi al-Qaeda groups, so helping bring men into the al-Qaeda groups through the Syrian border, and to help supply or even recruit, as like a recruiting transfer point through the Syrian government from the Syria into the into Iraq, and that all of this the guerrilla war that the al-Qaeda participated in throughout Iraq, and attacking the Americans, and especially trying to disable the Iraqi government from trying to move forward, attacking the police, and like a systematic killing of the police in order to discourage and create fear of the people from increasing or from participating in the new government. And so the al-Qaeda, so the Americans said that the Assad was the same as Saddam Hussein, creating weapons of mass destruction and a terrorist, and increasing terrorists in Iraq. And now, not now, after the all of this history and the events that happened in Iraq, there was people said that al-Qaeda had come to Syria, and it was very peculiar on who and what they said was al-Qaeda in Syria, and it's a very it's just very obvious and strange that the al-Qaeda, as it was known, and the terrorists that ever existed, which was only al-Qaeda, and all the whole scheme of the war on the terror and the name calling of any persons who feel oppressed by a government, to be name calling them terrorists, all of this came out of the war on terror and the Iraqi war and al-Qaeda. So now al-Qaeda, it's synonymous with terrorist, with the word terrorist, and the idea that you can strip away a person's rights by calling them a terrorist. You can deny them all of their human rights by name calling them a terrorist. It's a tool to bypass the person's representation under the law. And they brought it to Syria, and then they started calling all the wrong people al-Qaeda. And to this day, I would like to know which man is in Syria who thinks he's al-Qaeda, was being funded by Iran and helped from the Assad regime and fighting with Shia armies and trying to and having every interest in the welfare of the nation of Iraq. Who are these men in Syria that are al-Qaeda? Allahu Akbar.